We have an interesting case this evening for a project that's been more or less in the works for several years. Let me just read this into the record, please. This is CUP, Conditional Use Permit, 14-007, Gold Hill Square North Residential Dwelling Units. A request for a conditional use permit, review and approval for 7 extended stay residential dwelling units, i.e. apartments, located in the Central Business District on lots 1 through 7, Block 26, Highland Edition, City of Woodland Park, Teller County, Colorado. The request is being made by the Gold Hill Square North LLC, represented by the manager, William L. Page.
Thank you, Chair. Substitute Chair, I guess it is this evening. Temporary Chair. I want to thank you all for coming out on an evening that's obviously cold and wet, and thanks for bringing your valuable recommendations for City Council and being here to listen to this important CUP, conditional use permit case. This is a conditional use permit request for Gold Hill Square North, and this is for property located on lots 1 through 7 of Block 26 in Highlands Addition and Subdivision, and our applicant is Mr. William Page, who is here this evening. He is the Gold Hill Square North manager, as well as the project architect for this particular request. Going right into the reason for the request, Mr. Page is asking that we review and approve a remodel and addition to existing office space that is on the upper level of the business center at Gold Hill Square North. Above the businesses, there will be 7 extended stay residential dwelling units that he is requesting to place above that business center, and this is located in the Central Business District. And if you're familiar with your permitted use table, if you look under section N for residential dwelling units, you'll notice that item number 4 talks to 5 or more dwelling units, attached dwelling units, and that is what is relevant to this particular request, and it does require a conditional use permit. So that is why we're here this evening listening to this request. And also other areas of the code that are relevant to our review as planners are sections 18.23, which is Central Business District, which spells out all of the setbacks and height requirements for the Central Business District, as well as section 18.57 for conditional use permit criteria, and section 18.33, which is our performance regulations section. This next slide here shows you in the red outlined circle, that is the lots 1 through 7 and the site of the Gold Hill Square North. And you'll notice that it is a shaded aqua color, which indicates Central Business District. This site has actually been zoned commercial in some capacity consistently for the last 40 years. And you'll notice to the north and the west of this, there is more of that aqua color, again, Central Business District zoned. And then also directly to the north of that aqua color is urban residential, just a block north of there. Also want to point out what I like to, I guess, call a shade of purple blue that is to the south of the site. That is our public, semi-public zone, and that is, of course, Lions Park, and that's city-owned property. We also have to the southeast the violet color, which is our planned unit development zone. And then I've also placed several of the area property owners on this map so that you can kind of see who all, what entities and what every lot is owned by in the area. As far as businesses, we have the City of Economic Development Downtown Development Authority office at 710 West Midland, and then going to the east we have Woodland Laundry, and then Hackman House at 602 West Midland, and then on the corner just on the other side of Elm Street we have the CarQuest Auto Parts. Going south we have Diamond, Shamrock, and then across the highway right-of-way we have the Loaf and Jug, and several businesses in Gold Hill Square South, which is the planned unit development color and shade. And then to the west and southwest we have our health care covered, which is the Penrose Mountain Urgent Care directly to the west, and then to the southwest we have Colorado Springs Health Partners. This next slide here shows you the site plan. What I want to point out to you is the unique position of these lots, which is in between 3 street right-of-ways. To the north we have Midland Avenue, to the east we have Elm Street, to the west we have Walnut Street. It sits in between 3 street right-of-ways carrying 3 front yard setbacks, which is perhaps one of the reasons that we've had several requests for variances for setbacks, which we'll just briefly touch on for historical reasons for you further in the presentation. I want to also point out to you that Mr. Page plans on doing a phased approach of these residential extended stay dwelling units. There are 7, again, total residential dwelling units that he's proposing. The first 3 would be off of Walnut Street as part of phase 1, and this would incorporate in total 6,300 square feet of existing office space and additional space to a third level that would be incorporated into those 7 dwelling units. We also have in phase 2, this is building 1B, and by the way, this is building 1A that we'll start at in 2015. Then in 2016 to 2018, 3 additional units above building 1B, and 1 additional unit handicap accessible above Carmen's Restaurant in building 2. This is another picture of that in elevation, looking to the north over the Gold Hill Square North Plaza. Everything that's colored is what's relevant to tonight's conditional use permit presentation. These are all the dwelling units that we're requesting for the conditional use permit, and these are the first 3 units, again in that 2015 phase 1, and then the additional 3 units in building 1B. The first 3 units actually takes up around 2,500 square foot of existing office space will be utilized as part of that build, and then an additional 600 square feet will be added to that as a third level. And then over here in the 1B phase 2 build of the 3 units, that is around 2,400 square feet. And then another additional 800 square foot residential dwelling unit would be added also in that same time frame. I want to show for you the handicap accessibility, because I did mention that this is a handicap accessible unit that's being proposed. There is an entrance. This is looking south over Midland Avenue off of building 1B, and you'll notice that this is a parking garage permitted use that I'll talk about here in a minute. Not a part of the conditional use permit, but will be utilized a lot by the residential dwelling units, and there will be an ingress and egress off of Walnut Street behind this. And you'll notice this is the handicap accessible ramp, a door entryway off of the 2nd floor. Also wanted to point out to you the dumpster enclosure area that will be maintaining all the dumpsters. Right now some of those are in areas that are covered, and then a couple that are going to be moved in there as well that are in the existing space where the parking garages are going to be built. This is a depiction of the building elevations, this again being the Walnut Street elevations. You'll notice that the highest point, 33 feet, our maximum height restriction in the Central Business District is 35 feet. This next picture is of the floor plans, again only for those units in the first phase above the business center off of Walnut Street. To the south building 1A. You'll notice I've marked the units as they are marked on that elevation as well to make it easier for you to understand. You'll notice that these are, especially Unit 203, typical efficiency studio apartment, one area living space, also utilized as bedroom. Second unit here in Unit 202 does have separate bedroom. There is a kitchen area as well as a living area up here. And then a little bit larger unit for 201, that is 1,900 square feet, and that unit has separated living and bedroom quarters. All of these, by the way, are one bedroom. This is the third level of those same units, and you'll notice above that Unit 203, the rooftop, so there is not a third level to that. And you'll notice that only part of Unit 202 has a little bit of space, bathroom, and also some washer and dryer capacity. And then this is the third level of that 1,900 square foot Unit 201. And again, these are just relative to the first phase units that would be built in 2015. The remainder of the units right around 800 square feet each, and maybe just a little shy or a little more. But this is the one that has the most of the square footage, Unit 201. I want to point out that the two garages that are being built, I wanted to show them to you so that it would create an image of ingress and egress for the residential dwelling units, because the large majority of them would probably be utilizing these garages as well as parking off of Walnut Street. They are permitted uses, those two garages, and the top one is off of the corner of Midland Avenue and Walnut Street. It is approximately a little over 1,900 square feet. It's a 7-car garage, and then there's also a 1-car garage that will be built off of Building 1A of 300 square feet, and 1-car garage is what it would be. These are all expected to be built prior to the start of the first 3 units in 2015, and I understand that we should be getting that building and zoning permit any day. So, and then also want to point out to you that there were a couple of parking variances that are relevant that you should know about that did take place in 2011 to allow actually not parking variances, they are setback variances, excuse me, to allow these garages to be built without the 10-foot required setback. And so those all took place at the Board of Adjustment on April 18th of 2011 and were approved. Let's talk a little bit about alternative parking plan. That's a part of section 18.39020E. And one of the first things that staff did when looking at this was noticed that there is not really an area in our required parking number that talks to mixed use or addresses it in the table. So we determined that this was a good point for our alternative parking plan exception to be implemented, and Mr. Bill Page has provided us an alternative parking plan. You all should have received as part of your packet. You should have received a large table that broke out the requirements as it would be seen with the code, and then also a matrix of how that would be in accordance with his alternative parking plan as proposed. His alternative parking plan, based off of other similar mixed-use projects, a lot of them utilizing a shared parking concept that derives from studies that were done at the Urban Land Institute. I'm going to let Mr. Page elaborate on that for you. And if you have any questions, be sure to ask him of that, but I can also answer any questions with regard to the table and the approval of the recommendation of approval of that alternative parking plan. Some of the things that staff notes here are that the table of number of parking spaces, again, doesn't address the mixed uses, and that's part of the language in Section E, is that if we do not address that in our table, that the applicant is allowed to come up with a reasonable alternative parking plan that is backed by quantitative and qualitative data to show or demonstrate that his parking needs would be less than would or could be interpreted by our table of number of parking. There is a large spectrum of uses in this commercial center, everything from retail to professional offices to eating establishments, making it harder to matrix it in the existing table. And then also, some of those uses have preceded the actual ordinance change when we implemented the alternative parking plan and the latest ordinance implementation codified in that chapter. I want to also point out a couple of variances that are relative to the parking. In 1974, Mr. Page acquired a variance that approved off-street parking to be included in his parking total, and that is parking off of Walnut Street, Midland Avenue, and Elm Street. And then in 1975, also received unanimous approval to allow for figuring one parking space for every 5 seats as it's required for calculation of the theater project. So for the theater. This next slide here is just a summarization of the table that you all should have received in your packet. And it takes all the duplicates out for you and summarizes into large categories. This first, and I know it's kind of hard to read, but I am relying upon the fact that you all received that in your packets as well. So I'll lead you through it a little bit here. To the left, we have the use, and then this part here over to the bold line is what the current code requirement would be if you were to matrix it or try to matrix it into our number of parking spaces code. And then over to the right is his alternative parking plan numbers in comparison. And the retail business area was a large part of that table. All of them under our code were figured at one space for every 200 square foot of usable floor area, whereas Mr. Page has chosen a one parking space for every 400 square feet of usable floor area. So you can see the differences in the required number of parking with code 54 with his alternative parking plan, again based off of the Urban Land Institute commercial shopping center standard that many commercial shopping centers utilize in figuring shared parking, 29 for that particular area. Then you go into the eating and drinking places. Some of those are carry-in, carry-out delivery, which is figured at one space for every 200 square feet of usable floor area. Others of those were eat-in only, and those are figured either at one parking space for every 4 seats or one parking space for every 100 square foot, whichever is the larger number. So I've given you both, and then I've wrapped up the larger number. And then you will notice that Mr. Page's alternative parking plan matched all of those eating establishment numbers. And so then going down to the theater use, again, I covered that in the last slide. He did receive a variance to allow for a figuring of one parking space for every 5 seats, as opposed to what is required in our code, which is one for every 4 seats. So you can see the difference is our requirement in code would be 85. Of course, he obtained that variance, which brought that down to 67.6. And then also, you'll notice lastly the new residential units are wrapped up. And you'll notice that I've wrapped it up because all of them are one bedroom, and all one bedrooms in accordance with code are requiring 1.5 parking spaces. So rolled up, that would be 10.5. Mr. Page has chosen to provide one for each one-bedroom unit, but there is that 1,900 square foot unit in the Phase 1 in Spring that he has chosen to provide 2 for. So the total wrap-up of all of that is total required, if you were to try and matrix it to our parking number, is 185.5, and then under his alternative parking plan, his number was 140.6. Mr. Page has provided 126 spots of on-site and off-site parking. Again, off-street parking off of Elm Street, Walnut, and Midland Avenue, all approved through a variance through Board of Adjustment in the 70s. And then I also wanted to point out to you there is a public parking area that is a part of the economic development. It's right in front of the economic development city development office of 24 spaces. It's catty corner within walking distance, reasonable walking distance of this commercial center, 24 spaces. As rolled up, that's 150, which exceeds what he has as required in his alternative parking plan. And also want to note that there is overflow parking in this particular area of the city. If you are familiar with the area across from the Glass Broker off of Walnut Street to the west of there is a big vacant lot. Consider that overflow parking. There is also some overflow parking that is to the west of the the Avenue of Flags that's related to the Lions Park, and that in total is 45 spaces. If you were to add that overflow parking, it takes you actually above what is required in our numbers table. I'm just going to show you briefly some existing conditions. This is looking off of Elm Street, ingress, egress to the west. You can see all the facades of the existing businesses in that plaza, center, excuse me. You can also see this is the looking to the east off of Walnut Street, Glass Broker's garage. This is a picture of that. This is a picture, a snapshot to the southwest of the deck of Building 1B, and you can see that where the parking garages are, there's some large, I want to call them cargo cars, I guess, I'm not really sure, but they're large metal units, and this is where those parking garages are going to be placed. So when staff assesses and analyzes a conditional use permit, there are 11 criteria that we need to make sure that are addressed and we use to analyze that conditional use permit. The first one is that the use shall have a demonstrated direct need to be located in this proposed location. And this particular request does fit the intent of the Central Business District. The intent of the Central Business District is to be located in the downtown corridor area, and also talks significantly the only commercial zone that allows for walkability. In other words, the language in the Central Business District definition indicates motoring and pedestrian traffic can access that. And one of the major premises of a mixed use is that it be located in an area that allows for pedestrian walkability in a true mixed use area. So the Central Business District is actually the most conducive commercial zone to allow for that. It's been commercially zoned for over 40 years, and then if you look at the comprehensive plan map, you'll notice that it was slated for mixed use. So when I say slated, forecasted, I guess is a better word, for mixed use in the future. Gold Hill Square North is one of the few downtown plazas that is fully developed that can accommodate a true mixed use with minimal cost and mitigation. And there are some things that need to be mitigated, but all of those I'll discuss in detail as we go forward in these slides, and all of those have been conditioned and looked at between applicant and several of those agencies. Criteria number 2 talks about the use not endangering the public health and welfare. We, of course, have the commercial remodel zoning and building development permits, and as part of those procedures, we will ensure that there's compliance to the International Building Code and as well as the fire regulations. The proposed use criteria number 3, meaning that the use shall not substantially injure the value of vicinity properties. Woodland Park, of course, you know, it has a housing shortage, and in particular, with the onset of Charis Bible College, I heard a statistic just the other day that when they started in January, they had around 500 students, and I think they're up to 800 students now, and projecting to continue to grow. This proposed extended stay residential dwelling unit scenario are all one-bedroom efficiency studio type apartments that would be conducive to meet that need. Lisa Harrison, broker of GRI, states it best, and I'll just quote this out of her letter that was provided by our applicant. There is a need for this type of project. The project is a minimal density increase to vicinity properties with commercial surroundings. It will benefit the City of Woodland Park government tax revenues and help fill a much-needed temporary or short-term housing need within the city limits of Woodland Park. And I also want to point out that we did follow those public notification procedures where we sent out adjacent property, the courtesy adjacent property notice letters, as well as doing the courier notice and providing a sign posted on the property. We did receive one response from Ms. Lori Gloth. She has concerns for view corridor as well as traffic, parking, safety, and drainage. I believe that she's here this evening, and I'll let her talk to you about those concerns. I believe that she's planning on talking to you. Criteria number 4 is that the use shall be in harmony with the area in which it's going to be located. And this area is quite conducive to a mixed use. Currently, actually, in the Central Business District residences, the Central Business District area that's directly to the north of Midland Avenue, there are 2 residential type homes that are, I believe, legal non-conforming in the Central Business District, intermingled, if you will, within the Central Business District. And then if you look further to the north, we have that urban residential. So we have a sprinkling of residential already in this area. Comprehensive map, again, forecasts mixed use. Criteria number 5 talks about it meeting all, conforming to all of the policies and objectives and provisions of those city plans, and among those growth management, transportation, utilities, capital improvements, and downtown redevelopment. Again, mixed use forecasted in the comprehensive future plan. Economic development comprehensive plan action item 1.6.2. Does that sound familiar? Last time we were talking about the comprehensive plan and going through these goals. There is one in the comprehensive plan that states investigate the feasibility of constructing workforce housing, introduce mixed-use housing, particularly in downtown. So we feel that it's meeting our comprehensive goals, and that this is just an example of that. Trip generation letter was found acceptable by the city engineer, and the applicant is mitigating a potential conflict with IREA overhead facilities along Midland Avenue on the north side of building 1B, and that is being conditioned to address that he will mitigate that with IREA, and you'll see that in the conditions at the end. Applicant is also working with the city utilities to submit an appropriate fixture unit count for the mixed use that will meet the water and sewer requirements for a unique mix of use. Again, this is conditioned. This is one of the first times that we've had to come up with a scenario for our fixture unit count that would be appropriate for a mixed use And so it's conditioned, and I know that they will work together on that. Project has a concept that was actually received in 2011 and approved by the DDA, the Downtown Development Authority, in January of 2011, and qualified initially for a tax increment financing assistance of 75% as well. The next criteria is that it shall conform to all city regulations, including zoning, subdivision, utilities, building, construction. It meets all the requirements for heights and setbacks. The seven residential dwelling units meet those requirements. And then also we'll make sure that this complies with IBC and fire regulations. That's a part of the building permit process. And the applicant is aware of potential need to install sprinklers and will comply to such requirements as instructed during building review. Criteria number 7 talks about that the use will be designed or constructed or maintained to accommodate the on-site and off-site traffic generated. There was a trip generation letter that was submitted as part of this project by LSC, done by LSC Transportation Consultants in September, and it determined that the new lodging units will generate about 41 vehicle trips on average weekday. The city engineer has reviewed that and has found it reasonable and logical and approved it. We did also send this to the Colorado Department of Transportation for a review. Did that in mid-September, excuse me, and have not received a response yet, but we have a condition placed on the CUP, at least until we hear back from them that if there is something that needs to be mitigated and its staff feels it's appropriate to implement that could be conditioned as well. We also have recommended the approval of the alternative parking plan as discussed earlier in the presentation, and I think I covered most of that, but you can also ask me questions at the end if you have any. Criteria number 8 talks about the use being designed, constructed, and maintained with appropriate regard to topography, surface drainage, soil, natural and man-made hazards, streams, and environmentally significant features. The site's relatively flat, and these structures are already existing and they're in place to remodel. There's no significant impacts or challenges with regard to topography. The city engineer approved a drainage plan along with this development, and he has relooked at this as well, this particular conditional use permit and site plans, and just commented to encourage the applicant to continue to direct runoff of snow storage into Lions Park and other landscaped areas. Criteria number 9 is that the use shall be designed, constructed, and maintained with adequate water supply, wastewater disposal, solid waste disposal, air quality, and surface water drainage. It's served by both city water and sewer. Tap sizing may or may not be affected. And that goes back to that fixture unit count and getting an accurate fixture unit count, because that's what we base our tap sizing on. And so that is one of the reasons we've conditioned that they come to an accurate and appropriate fixture unit count for the mixed use. And then once we get that, then there could be, based on those numbers, tap sizing changes. But the applicant is aware of that. Billing changes could also occur. And during the commercial remodel, the applicant will be required to submit that fixture unit count for mixed use. Criteria number 10 is that the use shall be designed, constructed, and maintained without increasing public danger. Again, there's no significant safety hazards here. Commercial remodel, zoning, and building development permit process is going to weed out any of those hazards through its very stringent review and to those regulations. Criteria number 11 talks about the use being required to provide architectural design schemas and may also be required with amenities such as, but not limited to, fencing, landscaping, buffering areas, and other aesthetic enhancement measures as required by City Council. The proposed structure will have similar and complementary exterior to the existing commercial structure. We are conditioning that we receive a full color rendering to ensure that. And then also the applicant plans to add some iron rail fencing and handrails on the Walnut Street building facades and landscape areas projected for 2015. This is our staff recommendation. I'm going to read this verbatim so as not to lose content. I want to point out to you that I have added, since you received your packet, the areas in red. This first area that I've added is just to provide clarity that we are approving also, as part of this motion, the alternative parking plan that addresses the mixed uses here. Approval of a CUP for the addition of 7 extended stay residential dwelling units, i.e. apartments, above existing commercial space in 3 sections of the existing property in the Central Business District located on lots 1 through 7, Block 26, Highland Addition, City of Woodland Park, Teller County, Colorado. The additional use of this center for 7 extended stay units will also include approval of the applicant's alternative parking plan to accommodate the mixed uses. The permit is subject to the following conditions. Number 1, prior to the issuance of zoning development permit for the commercial development addition of 7 extended stay residential dwelling units, i.e. apartments, the applicant shall provide the following to the Woodland Park Planning Department. A, applicant shall submit a comprehensive fixture unit count analysis for each building and meet water and sewer tap requirements for the variety of uses within each building. B, applicant must mitigate to a satisfactory result the IREA the potential conflict with existing overhead electrical facilities along the north side of Building 1B. Any resulting mitigation must consider the northern property owners and must be paid for in full by the applicant. C, CDOT's final review response is pending at this time. Any comments received from CDOT that are determined by staff and city engineer to be appropriate for this project will be added as conditions. Applicant must submit for staff approval a full color rendering and materials for the remodel and building. And E, final lighting must be pre-approved by staff prior to installation and be full cutoff dark sky to reduce potential glare to residents to the north in accordance with Section 18.33.080F of the Code. Are there any questions?
Commissioners, if you don't mind, I think maybe we should hear from the applicant first, and then we can ask questions of the applicant and staff. If you don't mind holding for a moment
Absolutely.
or two while the applicant presents.
I think that's a good idea.
Thank you. Mr. Page? Would you please state your name and address for the record? Thank you.
My name is William L. Page, and I office at 627 West Midland in Woodland Park in the project. I live at 100 Cloverdale Grove in Divide, Colorado.
Great, thank you. Please, you have the floor.
Well, I think I want to compliment Lisa on her presentation and comprehension of, it's kind of a long drawn out project, and been a lot of, it's been going on for 38 years or so, and longer than that really. I acquired the property 49 and a half years ago, so, but I thought that she was quick, and she and Sally both were quick to understand the scope of it. Project, it's one thing I wanted to clarify. Lisa talked about on my alternative parking plan of 400 square feet for retail space, and then the 1 parking space for 5 theater seats. In 1975, when I built that project, that was the city requirement. The city had that requirement on 1 space for 400 square feet of retail up into, I think, the mid-'80s or so. But so we built the project to code at the time, and the code has been changed to add one additional one space for 4 seats for the theater, and then it went to 200 square feet for the retail. And the other thing I wanted to add is that when I originally built the theater project, me and my family ended up operating the theater, and we operated it for 5 years, and then we sold it. But it was under another family's ownership for 30-some years, but the second ownership kind of lost interest in operating a theater in Woodland Park, and the actual owner hadn't been here for 10 years to see what was going on and so on. And so I ended up kind of taking the theater project back over, and one of the key things that was instrumental in that, I had to find the right person to help me do it, and I found through an acquaintance with Ed Shirk. He's the theater manager. He's now partners in the business and people owners, and so when we took it over, that theater occupancy per average show for the seat was about 6.5%. In other words, you go in a theater with 150 seats, and 6% of them are occupied. And we have now, we divided our large theater into 2 theaters, and we now have our occupancy up about 17%, and we only have 7 more seats in the 4 theaters than what we built in 1976. So when you look at the alternative parking plan, the alternative parking plan still figures that we're going to occupy all of the seats. I mean, those are the ways it's calculated. And the other thing that I talked with Ed, and the most attendance we've ever had in the last 2 or 3 years at the theater has been a midnight show. And that's where people come out. If the show breaks on Friday, people want to, theater patrons are active and follow the movies that break and so on. They want to see it when it first comes out. And people show up, elderly people show up with grandchildren, or just a mixed age group. And we had about 200 at one of our midnight shows. Now, there's no other businesses open at midnight, and so I just wanted to point that out. And then the other thing is on the water fixture units, we actually have 3 different separate water taps that we've paid for in that project there. And I've previously met with Jim Schultz about 3.5 years ago. He was the city engineer at the time. It was right after we got the DDA approval to look into doing this concept. And and then so I guess that's the other thing I'd like to add to Lisa's presentation, and answer any questions if you got them.
I have one question, Bill. On that, the parking garages, and I
Yes.
know we talked about it in DDA, and that's been a while. Where is that snow going to go?
Basically, we conduct the snow off of the roofs through downspouts and interior roof drains.
And what about the snow removal inside that corridor?
You mean where the courtyard is?
You're going to build the garage?
Yes.
Okay, and so there's and then in that courtyard area, where's that snow removal going to go?
Well, we will, if it's on the parking, you talking about the roof or the parking areas?
The parking area.
Parking area, we would probably clean that out with one of our small loaders. And we primarily stack snow on the south side of our project, right next to the Avenue of Flags. And so we move, and then it melts and runs off into the landscape area. But that's been the way we've disposed of snow in that area there since the 70s.
Okay, so if you look at attachment B, on attachment B, with that parking garage area, you would move that snow from that ground area all the way around?
We would.
Okay.
I think actually, the other thing that I think is happening part of the time right now is the city comes through and does the streets. And then the city makes, like 2 passes, one way and one the other way. And then we have to get out there with our equipment and clean up between what the city is, they just leave a row of snow on the edge of their blade when they go down through there. And the city focuses on trying to maintain, 2 11 or 12-foot lanes for vehicles to pass. And I think some of the time we may be pushing some of the snow on Walnut Street to the other side of Walnut Street because there's vacant ground over there. And there's other times when we have hard snows. We keep a front end loader on site in the wintertime. It's got a 6-yard bucket in it where we can move. If we get 10, 12, 15, 20-inch snows, we have to stack it first. And then we have to move the stacks out of the parking areas someplace where they can melt and dissipate into the landscaping. And so, but we've been doing that snow removal there for 38 years.
Oh, I know you do a good job.
We get on it, like 3 o'clock in the morning, and you got to have the right equipment and crews that are willing to get up and do that. And we try to have the parking clean by the time customers show up. The primary area we focus on is the parking lot over by City Market for those customers who show up first. That's off site right now.
Thank you. That's all.
Any other questions for the applicant? Dan, Charlie? Well, I have a few.
Okay?
Just as a point of information, you know who owns the appears to be just a dirt lot to the what would that be just to the west of the site?
That's owned by Dale Duncan. He lives down in Colorado Springs. His son has the Big D sporting all-terrain vehicles across the street.
No problem pushing some of the snow.
Actually, we don't push it on his site. We just, there's probably 10, 12 feet there's no curb gutter on the other side of the street.
Right.
So there's dirt and grass and stuff from the edge of the paving probably to his property line. That's where we ended up pushing it that way.
Thank you. Just thinking about parking in general, and I gather from Lisa's presentation and your discussion about parking that having adequate parking, even with the new residential units, really will not be a problem, and frankly hasn't been a problem in the nearly 4 decades that you've had the property.
These 3 residential units, I've had vacant office space where I'm putting those residential units. I've been sitting on for 8 years or so. I finally got picked up 15 months of rental or something like that the last year or so. But the people renting office space is kind of in business areas with people office and the laptops they carry. People don't rent office space as much as they used to. They work at home, or they work out of their car with their computer. So if you got an office building, it might be like owning a dinosaur, you know, that maybe the use isn't what it used to be.
Yeah, certainly there isn't the need for brick and mortar that there was a couple of decades ago.
Right.
I'm assuming that one of the reasons why you're going to add these residential units in phases is to minimize the impact on the local businesses. Was that part of your thinking, or?
Oh, that wasn't my main part of the thinking. My main part of the thinking was that I want to make sure I build the right product. And rather than guessing on 7 floor plans, I thought I'd be better to have 3 floor plans to start out with and learn from my mistakes what people want to rent and stuff like that. So the other thing has to do with just the risk. You know, our economy in this nation and Woodland Park isn't what it used to be, and everything has risk. You know, you can guess sometimes and maybe be right. You can guess sometimes and you can be wrong, and you can guess other times and really be wrong. And so it's just kind of a cautious approach.
Have you selected a general contractor
I have.
at this point?
Yes.
And we certainly don't need to know who that is.
I don't mind telling you, he's one of my tenants. He's also my son. Page Construction, PCI Construction. Okay.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Okay.
And he will be able, at least to some extent, to use local material suppliers and some local labor.
We're probably pretty close to about as close to 100% as you can get on that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's good news. Very good. Any other thoughts, questions?
Just a comment. I know you've been working on this for a long time, and I think it's a great idea. You're taking that space that you can't rent and turning it into something that will produce income. Plus, it'll also help us with the housing situation. So I commend you for that.
Thank you.
I'll second that. Excellent.
Thank you.
If we may, Lisa, would you be kind enough to come back up, please? Thank you, Mr. Page. And take any questions that the commissioners might have, please.
Right.
Lisa, on criterion number 11, there is the word landscaping, but there really is nothing in this document, nor in the diagrams, that indicates any type of landscaping on this project.
Yep.
Is there any recommended or required?
We have not received any landscaping plans per se at this point as part of the conditional use permit process. That would be something that we would inevitably see during review of the commercial development. But we could ask Mr. Page to perhaps elaborate on that. Could we ask you to maybe, can you come up and elaborate on the landscaping that you're conceiving, that you're thinking about?
On Walnut Street, we've got some areas that we will have some landscaping at the intersection of Walnut and Midland Avenue, and also on the diagonal garage that goes out from the it's on the other side of. Let me pull another drawing up here. This drawing right here, this garage here, has got a triangular area out in front of it that will have some trees and rocks and landscaping and stuff. And then also there'll be some landscaping around this area up here. We will also be doing some additional landscaping around the theater entry. That doesn't relate to this specific project. There will be some on these lodging units. These 3 lodging units will look out on a roof area, and some of those roof areas will have some patios and some flower pots and stuff like that. So the people that live in the living units will maybe see more close-up landscaping than maybe someone that's, say, in front of Domino's Pizza, where there's people driving up and picking pizzas all the time. So we also have some planters that have flowers in the project that we put annuals in and stuff like that. We will have some perennials planted in certain areas that we like landscaping.
Thank you. That's what I hope the answer would be.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Page. Questions for Lisa? I have a couple.
Okay.
Do you see any? And I don't see any, but you're the planner. Did you see any potential negative impact on Lions Park at all whatsoever? None.
No, I really don't. In fact, I would think, right now they're utilizing their snow storage and taking that, diverting it into Lions Park, which is what city engineer recommends we do, and instead of putting it to impervious areas, and so that's a benefit. I don't really believe, based on the fact that I've showed you the numbers for the parking, there is that overflow parking to the west, but as Mr. Page has already stated, the theater really doesn't dictate as much parking based on its operations that is included. That's the maximum number, the maximum numbers we're giving you in that alternative parking plan. So I really don't think that we would even need to utilize that overflow parking, but it is there if we should need it.
Yeah, thank you. The reason I asked the question, I think I think that particular park, although it's small, is really one of the jewels
Yes.
of Woodland Park.
Right. Yes, it is.
So I'm glad to hear that there won't be negatively impacted.
Right.
Did you have any replies from the 2 homes or
Residential types? Yes.
that are just to the
No, I did not. I did
So,
not have any
zero.
feedback from them. You're talking about, let me go to my slide
the
here.
other 2.
You're talking about 610 West Midland Avenue and then also 624 West Midland Avenue. No, I did not
Nothing
receive.
from them.
I did not receive any feedback from them.
Good. Any further questions for staff? Thank you. We'd like to open the public comment portion.
Do you have this sheet? Yes. Okay, good.
Cliff notes. Open the public comment portion, and we have one individual, Lori Glouth, signed up to speak. Ma'am, would you like to come up, please? And state your name and address for the record, please.
Lori Gloth. I own the property at 602 West Midland Avenue, known as the Hackman House. I live at 472 Lucky Lady Drive, north of Woodland Park. I am assuming tonight you're going to approve what Bill has come forward with. I think it's going to be an attractive, updated version of a Gold Hill North that has grown to be outdated, and the architecture is going to be attractive. There's no question about that. I also recognize the mixed use and the benefit of that. It's something that we've talked about in this community for a long time. I too have sat up there in your position. I served on the Woodland Park Planning Commission in the 90s. So I understand this entire process. I understand what you're looking at. But there are some things I just want to bring to your attention to be aware of and to ask questions about. This development was done with zero setbacks from the get-go, and it was done on a north street on Midland Avenue. That is shade all the time. That is ice all the time. And yes, Bill has been out religiously having his crews clean that continually. But I will tell you, what we're living with on Midland Avenue today is a lot different than it was when this building and this site was developed. Today we have, I equate it to an alley in a large city. The backside along Midland has turned into noise, trash, crows, people from the restaurant who work to go take their cigarette breaks on the backside of the buildings, sitting on their milk crates, smoking, sitting back in broken chairs next to the trash bins. It is not an attractive place to be. Whether the buildings are in a commercial zone back behind there, every building and every development, the front side looks wonderful. The back side has slowly deteriorated over time. The electrical lines back there, which I realize are going to be addressed. However, there's very large transformers back there. There are guy wires that come down that actually take away parking places, because the guide wires come down and they're in a blocked off parking place or a designated parking place with lines, but you can't park in those places. You have delivery vehicles that on a regular basis, if they're heading west on Midland, they will pull over into the eastbound lane so that they can stop and drop their back ends of their trucks, their lift gates, their ramps, so that they can deliver to the businesses back there. So now you've got these delivery trucks in the wrong lane. Now you got traffic stopping both directions trying to go back. It's a reality in Woodland Park. Okay? We don't have enough space. But what we do is we take a bad situation and we continually, in my opinion, make it worse and build on it. It's just something to be aware of. Now, I would offer that somebody needs to look at making Midland Avenue a one-way street. Perhaps it's a one-way street. For years, when people cut off and turn on Midland off of 24, that's a cutoff to get up to Highway 67. They aren't moving slow through there most of the time. Okay? I have an exit out of the Hackman house that empties onto Midland Avenue. Bill was doing construction for over a year, just not too long ago. He had cones up in there. Fortunately, I moved my business. If I had not moved my business, I could not have gotten my semi in for my delivery and got him out of there. We always do too much in too little space in this town. And so that's a huge concern of mine. So on a back side here, we got an alley. We have trash. And I have a question. When I saw the rendering and the drawing, Bill, of the back side of the building, every business theoretically is supposed to have a trash receptacle, and it's supposed to be enclosed. So does that mean, with that rendering that I saw, does that mean that everybody's trash is going to one location for one pickup? Or is the residential folks going to now have their dumpster in addition to those other dumpsters that are along there? And if he changes tenants, does that mean, you have quite a variety of tenants in the facility, so trash requirements may change over time and need receptacles moved in and moved out, and the backside of the building is the place, of course, to do that. Snow removal. Granted, we haven't had very many tough winters lately. We haven't had a huge amount of snow, but the snow on the north side can't be left there because it turns to ice, and that as soon as one car drives over it, it's compacted. So my concern there is, right now, a lot of that snow, you guys addressed over on the west side, but on the east side, you moved the snow over there to kind of the corner of Elm and Midland. And some of that on heavy snow times, you've left some there, and then you have, I think, carted that as well down towards the park. But it's I'm just concerned with the amount of traffic, the amount of trash trucks, the amount of deliveries. It's a two-way street, and the people speeding when they turn off of 24 going up to 67. And then those electrical lines, it's just a conglomeration of a mess back there, guys. None of us likes to look at it on the back side. I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm not going to have my view blocked. He's going to go up higher, and it's going to create a bigger shadow on Midland Avenue, so you're going to have more northern shade. And I know no one else is here to talk about their view corridor, which is not going to go anywhere anyway, that discussion, so that doesn't matter. But my concern is more like just what we're creating back there. We're setting a pretty crappy precedence, quite frankly. And one of the things on the electrical lines in the staff report, and this is for staff, staff recommended electrical consideration of neighbors to the north. That doesn't sound like a hard stipulation to me. What I would like to know as a property owner, what will be the resolution of the electrical lines? Because I believe there are some setback requirements for where those electrical lines are. They have to be so far, and I don't know exactly what those are, setback from any building. And if he's adding residential, is he going to have to move them? Is he going to have to go underground? And I hope the option isn't to go to the north side of the street with the electrical lines. So my point is, I would like to have some consideration and a follow-up as to how the electrical will be resolved back there, or what has to be done. And I would just like to make a comment about parking. He meets all the codes, but I personally believe our codes are antiquated. We don't have enough parking in this town. And I will tell you another reason I believe that. Our vehicles today are not small vehicles. Our vehicles today are large vehicles. They take up a huge amount of space. They're dangerous. You guys have all been in Gold Hill and other areas in Woodland Park. So I have a question on Walnut Street where the glass broker is. And there's a lot of parking on Walnut. And I was just through there the last couple days. And once again, large vehicles, large trucks hang off into the street right away. If you're traveling Walnut North, you've got tail ends of vehicles hanging out right there. Large vehicles, large trucks, service vehicles, customers. And as you come up to Walnut and you stop, and you're either going to go left and you're going to go west on Midland, or you're going to go right on Midland, it's a blind corner. Drive over there, drive that direction going north, and try to make a left-hand turn. You almost have to be committed in making a left-hand turn, and you cannot see past those vehicles that are parked parallel on Midland Avenue, which is where he's going to build. So you're going to have the building now to block the view. You have a blind turn, and someone's going to get T-boned there. There's no question in my mind because of the speed of the vehicles coming through there. It's a bad corner. Bad corner. It's not safe. And then again, you add the size of the vehicles on top of that. So I'm just going to mention that to you guys on that. And another point I just wanted to make on Walnut there, where those vehicles, the large vehicles, do park in front of the glass broker. Another case in point is over here on Baschholz's building, where he's got vehicles parking perpendicular to the street and his butt ends of his vehicles or the cars parked at his building hang out into the right-of-way of the city street, to me, it's the same issue. And maybe staff can elaborate on that. Sally, I think you know what I mean there. I think that's it.
Commissioners, any comments, questions?
I just have a comment. I especially noted your comment on construction over a year. I assume that was during the renovation of the theaters. And I do remember the hassle, if you please, of going down Midland Avenue because of all the cone zones and construction areas and things like that. And I hope that when this construction does commence, if it does, that the builder will be aware of the issues on Midland with all of the cone zones and everything. I saw that as a big problem when I did go down that street on occasion.
Well, I'll tell you, I got out of my car many times to move the damn cone so I could make a right-hand turn out of my driveway.
I have a question for staff. So on the north side of the building, there's no setback. Is the city required to have any snow removal behind that building? I'm not totally clear on who's responsible to remove the snow in the back of the building.
It depends on whether it's the private property or it's the right-of-way. That's what we go off of when city crews are clearing streets. They are targeting the areas that are right-of-way. So it doesn't really pertain to setbacks per se. It's where the property line is.
It's a
And-
zero lot line.
That's what so does the lot line go, does the building go all the way to,
I'd have to look up that variance, that specific
Because I've
variance.
driven back there too, it's a little sketchy.
But
So I was just curious.
it's not zero setback. They did meet a setback, but I can't tell you off the top of my head what it is.
It's not standing.
Do we have anyone else in the room this evening that would like to make his or her comments? If not, we will close the public comment. Mr. Page, if you have some things you'd like to say, please come forward. Thank you.
On the subject of setbacks, in 1975 and 1976, when those buildings were built, they had a 10-foot setback from Midland Avenue. And they were not built on the property line. The building across from Lori Gloth has a 10-foot setback from the property line. The property line is out partially in the parking that's on the north side of that building and on the south side of Midland Avenue. So I wanted to clarify that. That shows on the Alta survey that I turned in. It's on attachment B. I got a 24 by 36 drawing that shows all of the construction on adding the Theater 4 between the two buildings, we had that was all done within our property, but we didn't have any place to situate any equipment, and we got a permit from the city to fence, I think it was 10 foot out into the right-of-way with fence panels, and it was just very tight quarters. And so that was, that did create some, well, let's say, inconvenience for drivers there and people going through there. The other thing with the housing projects that we have planned here, we will not be, I don't think we'll access off Midland Avenue. On the housing project in the first three, it'll all be over on the construction process will happen in a fenced area inside our property line. And so on the Lori's talked about the traffic on Midland Avenue going through at a high rate of speed. And I have written a couple letters to the city manager about that, and they did do put a sign out that was, I think they were reading the speed limit. It was last maybe March through April or June, something like that, about seeing if we could get some signs up there to reduce the speed, because I've seen people go through down that street 50, 60 miles an hour, and they're going west, and they're trying to miss the traffic signal at 24 and 67, and they roar down to 67, barely stop and head north on 67. But it could be a dangerous situation, and so that is a problem. And the other thing on the guy wires on the electric poles back there, a lot of those guy wires, we have worked in delivery service areas. We've got trash disposal units we pick up. Lori talked about one trash disposal area. We have 4 areas that have trash dumpsters over there now, roll-offs, or the ones that pick up in the back of the truck. And there's one on 110 South Elm. It's actually sitting on Midland Avenue. There's behind Domino's and Carmen, there's 2 restaurant dumpsters in there, and they're behind steel gates. There is a dumpster over at the Glass Poker on Walnut Street, and we have 2 dumpsters that are at the west end of my office floor in an enclosed parking area, and those are the 2 that we're showing off of Midland Avenue behind some gates. So there would be trash pickup at those units. The housing units would be utilizing the trash dumpsters that we would have enclosed, the new ones underneath the handicap ramp that goes to the 2nd floor. And on deliveries, I don't think I can do anything about it. Maybe the city police department or city crack down on I don't know if the city actually has a policy on deliveries. I know down in Manitou Springs, deliveries are made right out in the middle of the street. And so I don't know, as the city grows, there may have to be something done on deliveries, drivers, and make sure they stay in the right lane when they pull in a park. And maybe that ought to be a new city code thing that was adopted in the city code. Maybe another article on that. The cigarette breaks behind the restaurants. I know what Gloria's talking about on that. I see that every time I drive down the street, and I have a plan whenever we get around to working on the back side of that building of shielding those areas with a screen fence out closer to on our property line, where those employees have a place to take a break outside without vehicles driving by and seeing them on their cigarette break. But I don't have an implementation on that plan yet. That might be 2 or 3 years off. So that would be my answers or comments back on Lori's comments that she made.
Thank you. Commissioners, any further questions of either the applicant or staff?
I have one. What
other comment on Walnut Street if you're through with your questions. The storefront on Glassbroker sits 26 feet from our property line on Walnut Street. And where those Glassbroker trucks park, the Walnut Street is, when it goes north from Midland Avenue, if you stand down south of our project, straight up Walnut Street, you will see where 24-foot drive lanes are in Walnut Street, and where those trucks park, where they're hanging out, they look like they're hanging out. They're not in the 24-foot drive lane. You know, they're in this area that it's either in the 26 feet that we own in front of the building, or it's part of the parking permits I got 1575. But you know, when vehicles turn off of 67 go north on Walnut, you can see how that street marks up.
Sally, is there something that can be done along those lines to mark that?
Yes.
Make it, I mean, that
Yeah, I
seems
think
pretty
that
obvious.
having the center of the road marked or the edge of the driving lane marked and well-defined parking spaces could all help facilitate that.
They do stick out, quite a bit. The other thing I was gonna ask is, because I know it was an issue with the BLA when they came, the variance, about the possibility of getting a stop sign at Walnut. That would slow the traffic down, and it would cease to be a blind turn, because it is. I've been there, Lori, I know. So is that something that we can check on, about trying to get a stop sign, a four-way stop?
It sure is, and Lori's suggestion of a one-way, we are about to embark on a circulation plan for downtown Woodland Park, so these things could all be looked at more closely. Circulation.
It's pretty congested back there. Taco Bell, Fiesta Mexicana, and everything else, and I have seen cars go flying down that street.
You know, I submitted a letter to David Budry last winter for or stop sign on Midland Avenue and Walnut, just to stop that traffic because they're slowing down. I mean, they go through there really dangerous fast.
Well, if you could check into that, I think that would hopefully help part of the situation.
Any other questions for staff, or for the applicant? Okay, thank you, Mr. Page.
Thank you.
Well, the time has come to talk it over. Based on what we've heard, the drawings, staff's recommendation, etc. Any thoughts about this project?
including the alternative parking plan.
Yes. Including the alternative parking.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Motion? If not, Sally?
Thank you. Mattingly,
Yes.
Probst,
Yes.
Rollinger,
Yes?
Schrader,
Yes.
and Vogel.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. This will move to the city council agenda on first reading on the 16th and then public hearing on November 6th.
Okay, thank you. Do we have one more item?
One more item. Just briefly, most of you were involved, except for I think Dan, with the adoption of the 2010 comprehensive plan. So it has been 4 years since this plan was put in place, and as a result, the staff has done quite a bit of work to begin to address these 300 plus action items that were identified in the 13 different chapters. So we felt that it was important to document the status of each of the action items and make an addendum to the comprehensive plan to show what has been accomplished and even make recommendations of maybe tweaking some of these action items. So as a result of that, you all spent a few workshops discussing the first 3 chapters, and then the department heads and other committees, including one that Lori serves on, which is the Historic Preservation Committee, went through their action items and made comments relative to the status of them. So as tonight, the purpose was to ask if you had any other input or changes. Otherwise, we will bring this forward to City Council, let them know that you have worked
Please.
Well, your participation in that document is what makes it alive and is what gives it legs. And it is a living, breathing document as long as we who all serve on different committees and participate. If they sit on the shelf and they gain dust, they're useless. And if we're going to have a vision as a community, if we're going to know what we want to be when we grow up, if you will, these documents have to mean something. And sometimes those matrices that we look at seem a little daunting and go, oh my God, you're going to have to spend a whole meeting or a work session on this. But it really forces you to focus and to help you understand your role as we all serve on all these different committees, and they're all so interdependent and interwoven. And so it's really important that you embrace it and look at it. And if you have questions about something that might have been written 3 or 4 years ago, or what you guys even had in there last year, or look at it, make it mean something, make it be relative, have some dialogue amongst yourselves to say, hey, is that really what we meant? Or, I don't think that's what we want to do, because if you aren't accomplishing what it is the baseline is and you aren't making steps towards that, you need to adjust it up. So it's easy to look at it as oh my God, it's something I got to do. But the more you can understand it, it's easier. So keep at it. I've looked at it a few times, and initially it looks a little overwhelming, but I will tell you, with people like Sally's guidance, and I haven't had the opportunity to work with Lisa, but with Sally's guidance and helping walk through, it's old hat to her, and it does help. But these documents, you know what? Master plans, comprehensive plans mean absolutely nothing unless you're part of it. So I just encourage you to stick with it, and because that's what's going to make all these groups grow together, especially now that we have Main Street and we're a Main Street candidate. So, okay.
Good, thank you.
Case in point, you worked hard on prioritizing your goals for 2015. I just read the city manager's budget message that will be delivered to the city council, and your memo identifying your priorities will be inserted into that budget message. So it is work last thing I have is that we do have a meeting for October 23rd, and you will be seeing a conditional use permit for an auto sales car lot. And so that's why it's important that at least we have this ordinance in the works.
We've been up without a lot, haven't
We have
we, for
since
some time?
Mr. DeVoe
Right.
eliminated his used car lot. But we apply this same code to the ATV, snowmobiles, and motorsports.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion or comments? Anybody? Entertain a motion to,
Motion to adjourn.
Go to that for lack of a second.
all those in favor say aye. Adjourned. Thank you.
Good job.
Good job, Tom.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for stepping up, Tom.